Beryl Rice, thank you for coming. Tell us a little bit about what we want to do today. Is we're going to talk a little bit about who you are as a person, where you came from, some your background, a little bit about your character and some things like that. We want to understand your vocational life, your career, your skills that you relied on as you made your way through life. And then we want to talk about the community. We want to talk about some community issues, about some of the issues that were prevalent, as you began your activities here in the neighborhood. So let's start with your background. Tell us a little bit about where you came from originally.
Well, originally I was born in Barbados, West Indies. And my parents emigrated to New York. And I grew up part of my life in New York, part of my life in New Jersey, and part of my childhood in Cleveland, Ohio, and then back to New York.
Wow.
So
take us from the
that's
beginning.
my growing up.
Let's go to the beginning. You were born in the island. What was it like there?
Well, I was just there as a baby.
Okay.
I didn't see the islands until I grew up.
Did you visit
Yes,
later
I
in life?
visited when I grew up. Yes.
And you had relatives there?
I have relatives there. Right.
Your family is from there?
Yes.
Originally? Many generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me the island again. Just where is
Barbados.
it? Barbados. And that is located?
Close to Trinidad, it's close to South America.
Okay.
It's one of the furthest out islands of the West Indies, in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Okay?
And
And
you
it's
left there when you were age?
8 months old.
8 months. And your parents came to New York?
Yeah.
They did.
Actually, my mother went back to have me born there for some reason. My sister was already born in New York, and my other sisters were born in New York. So I'm one of 3 sisters.
You're the youngest?
I'm the middle.
You're the middle? Okay. You're the middle. Why do you think she wanted you to be born there?
I'm not sure. She probably had a longing to see her home again, since she had left there and had lived in New York. And, many immigrants, when they came to New York, had to make their way. They didn't come there because somebody invited them. And so, when she came, she had to live with some relatives who had come earlier, and she had to take jobs where she could get them. But they heard that the United States was a land of, golden opportunity. So they came, and my father was also from there, of course, and he had come a little earlier. So I think he wanted her to have a chance to go back and visit the family. But also I have a feeling, she never told me this, but my father wanted to go in business. My father's dream was to take a business back to Barbados. He really thought I could start a business in Barbados if I could get the products sent there. And he had a brother there who was supposed to be helping him start this business, but the brother was more interested in coming to the United States. So I have a feeling that might have been the reason my father sent my mother home, to see how he was doing with the business that he was trying to start. I think. That's my impression. But he never got back to do that. That was a dream of his.
What kind of business did he want to start?
It was like it seemed like a grocery business, because he had one of these suitcases with all kinds of samples in them. And so that's all I can tell. It seems to be a store that would sell products to people in the island.
Right.
Everyday products.
Did your parents know each other before they
Yes,
went
they
to
did.
New York?
Yeah.
They did. Were they married before?
No.
They weren't.
No.
But how old were they when they went to New York?
Oh, well, I don't know for sure. This is just a tale. My father always admired my mother, and she paid no attention to me. So it was like, then they met up in New York because they had to live in similar circumstances. And then I guess he was the major suitor. But she was a city girl. Put it this way, she lived in Bridgetown, which is the main city in Barbados, Bridgetown. He lived in St. George's Parish, which is out in the country. So she thought of him as a country boy. But anyway, he did all right for himself. Okay?
Yeah.
And
Was that a significant class distinction then in Barbados?
yes, yeah,
City dwellers and
yeah, city.
farmers?
Well, there's a lot of class distinctions in Barbados.
Is that right? Barbados has, is it French?
No, it's English.
It's English. Okay.
It's a
Practices English
it's a very
common law?
English looking, and it had all the things that they have in England: the Parliament, the judges, the governor.
Right.
So it really is a little model England, and it was a kind of island where they grew sugarcane, and that was a major product. That and grew bananas and sugarcane, but it was very rocky and hilly, and I found that it was a beautiful island, but it was very distinctive in terms of its little all winding kinds of roads and sugarcane that bending over the roads and that kind of stuff. So I found it.
Is it a big island?
No, it's about 28 miles long, and it's not too wide. I forgot how wide it is. 15 miles. Wow. No, it's not wide.
Do you know approximately what the population is?
I don't at the moment. No.
4 or 5 million, maybe?
Huh?
Not that many?
I'm
2
not
million?
sure that it's maybe I've forgotten what it was. I really don't remember. I knew once what the thing was. I don't know. I don't want to guess.
Yeah, sure. What part of New York did you live in?
Harlem.
In Harlem. There were a lot of folks from the islands who moved into Harlem.
Yes.
You would have gone there in the 40s?
No, that was way back. I'm early part of the 20th century. No, I was there in the 20s.
What year were you born, Beryl?
I'm not telling you. Dream on.
Well, I'm going to guess that you're 63. How's that?
You can do whatever you want. But anyway, no.
The Depression was pretty harsh.
It came along, yeah. The Depression came along.
And Harlem was a tough place.
Yeah, except by that time we were in Cleveland. No, where were we? Well, this is kind of interesting. After my mother and father got married, they bought a house in Englewood, New Jersey.
Wow.
Which was really a small town in New Jersey where the roads hadn't even been put in, but the houses were being built. And so he bought a house there. So they moved to New Jersey soon after, I guess not soon after they got married, but my sister was about 3 and I was about, a year and a half, something like that. My other sister was born in New Jersey, Englewood, New Jersey. Wow. So we lived in New Jersey, and I started elementary school in New Jersey, and then we went to Cleveland, Ohio, because my father's occupation was a clerk with the railroad, Erie Railroad. You probably never heard of these railroads, but Erie Railroad was
Erie Railroad?
Erie Railroad,
Sure.
yeah. So he was a clerk there, and then when they moved the offices to Cleveland, he had to go. So we ended up in Cleveland, Ohio.
What part of Cleveland did you live in? In the
Mount
city?
Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant.
You know Cleveland?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Is that on the east side?
Frankly, no, I don't think so. I think it's up, a ways up, out, like on I don't know, like an edge.
Along the lake?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So it'd be west.
No, it was kind of a bohemian neighborhood. I mean, by bohemian, I mean, there were Jewish and Dutch Reform, people like that.
Right. European Bohemian.
Yeah.
Right. Your father was a clerk. Had he received formal education? Had he been to school?
Oh, definitely. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. You have to know that in Barbados is one of the most literate islands in the West Indies.
Yeah.
Because everybody gets to go to school.
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Yeah, and it's and they're very thorough in their education. My father could quote poetry and stuff that he, all his life. My father was a very intelligent man who took his learning seriously. He wanted to be a teacher, but I think he decided he'd better come to, it's sort of like people decide, where can I, what happens when people emigrate, let me put it this way, from an island, a small island, is they feel that there hasn't been enough opportunity, that the positions they may have wanted are taken, and so they have to move for greater opportunity. Just like when people migrated from the South, they were looking for greater opportunities. So that's really why people migrate.
Right.
Or immigrate, or whatever you want to call it.
The standard compulsory education in Barbados is through 12th grade?
The English system is such that I wouldn't apply it to this.
Okay.
But it's at
They
least
do it a
through
little
secondary level, whatever that is.
But a person is finished by the time they're
They can go on
17
to
or
college. Yeah, they're finished. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because they have a school like called Harrison College and so forth. They have sort of a college level. But they're not a university. My father didn't go to a university.
He did not.
No.
Did he receive training to be a clerk?
No.
Accounting training?
No.
Things he learned?
No. No, actually he learned on the job.
Yeah.
He did.
Your mother also completed her required education?
I think so. Except my mother had a different kind of experience than my father, because her parents died when she was young, and her brother raised her, her brothers and his wife. So she feels she was deprived of some of the things that she could have had if her parents had lived.
Right.
So that's part of the reason her sisters migrated here. Most of them came here. She already had a sister here.
I see. In Harlem? Folks who moved into New York especially, all places probably, but there are certain sectors of the city where certain ethnic groups
settle.
congregate, and most commonly it works like that somebody comes, a real adventurer, and they get settled, and they help other people get settled as well.
Right.
So that was a big part of your experience, is relying on family
Yeah, oh sure.
to help you get around. Yeah. So you grew up then in Cleveland.
I grew up in several places.
Okay.
My father decided that Cleveland was not the best place for us to be raised as Negroes. Then we were called Negroes then. And so he decided to send us back to New York for better opportunities. So he sent us back to New York because he felt things were sort of closed out for us in Cleveland. And he stayed in Cleveland and worked and sent money, and we settled in Brooklyn. And I went to Brooklyn Girls High School at that time.
At what age did you come back from Cleveland?
I went into high school. What was I? 13, 14?
Age 14.
Something like that.
What do you remember about
I
Cleveland?
don't remember. I know. I had just finished junior high, and probably I was 11.
I see. Okay. What do you remember about Cleveland? What kind of a place was that?
Cleveland. Well, in terms of the neighborhood, I remember the neighborhood the most, okay? And we were went to a Dutch Reformed church, because my mother always sent us to some church, to some Sunday school. And all our friends were white. And I was I was in elementary school then. I was the tallest girl in my class. That I remember, because I'm always at the end of the line. And I thought I was going to be a giant. But, and so we had a very nice, we enjoyed Cleveland for what it was worth, except when I was entering adolescence after a while. After adolescence, white kids didn't associate with us the same way. So that's part of my father's thinking, I'm going to send them somewhere where there'll be more people like themselves, and et cetera.
That was a very intelligent thing for him to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went to Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant, and they probably don't know about Bedford-Stuyvesant, but Bedford-Stuyvesant was a well-known area in Brooklyn, New York, that most black people lived in. and it had all the people that you could think of. They owned brownstone houses and things like that. And there were many people there that really, made it a community. So we lived there and we went to school there. And then I went on to Brooklyn College from there.
Later, it became kind of a notoriously tough neighborhood, but
Yeah.
when you lived there, it was quite well kept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us about it. What do you remember?
About-
Were there certain stores or colorful characters in the community that you remember?
Hold on, hold on. No, I don't remember any people except my girlfriends. No, really. When I think about Brooklyn, we had, it was like going to school, always going to school, trying to make good grades, and coming home. And my mother was very strict, and my father was very strict. And so if we want to hang out on the street, he'd come out and say, now it's time to come in. That's the things I remember. He would say, you have to get off the stoop and come in. Or you have to, he really was funny. We'd be out there floating with boys, and he'd come out and say, go home. You gotta go home. So, anyway.
Hang on one second. Did you study music?
My sister got the music lessons. I didn't. I took up the cello at one point in school, but that was it.
Did you play sports?
No. In where? You talking about high school?
In Bed-Stuy, uh-huh.
No, not particularly.
You studied hard.
I just took the regular courses. Took French and Latin in high school so I could get to college, kind of thing. Plus, I liked French.
Yeah.
And so I was going to be a French teacher at one point. And I qualified to get into a free college. Then Brooklyn College and City College were free to residents of New York. So that's how I got my education as a college.
You went to Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn College.
What were your favorite subjects in high school?
French.
Okay. And then you went on to Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn College.
What'd you study there?
French? No. Actually, I wanted to be, as I said, a French major and a French teacher. I didn't get such good grades there, so I switched to sociology and
Good
anthropology. No, I didn't like sociology.
No?
I thought it was the driest subject going. I liked anthropology. Anthropology was fascinating. You know the difference between sociology and anthropology, kids? Never heard of it, huh? Anthropology is about cultures, how people lived, and it's the study of cultures, and that I loved. I had a teacher who had lived with Indians and out in the West, and he told us about their culture, and there's a lot to learn from other people's culture, and that was interesting to me, much more so than sociology, which was very theoretical and just straight down the line about how do you understand a crowd, how do you understand groups, which was useful, but it wasn't as interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, you know what? Those were minors. Actually, I majored in design.
Design?
Mm-hmm. There was an art department there that changed suddenly when some professors came in. They hired some professors from Germany who were in. Now this is really, you wouldn't even know how to spell this, but the Bauhaus was a movement in Germany. And it was the idea that art should be functional. And so any things you made with wood, things you could do with any creative way, ought to have some functional aspects to it. So it was very interesting. I took photography and woodworking and pen and ink drawings and stuff like that. So it was a lot different from some art departments where you study mostly art history. They were very experimental.
Wow.
So that became my major.
Did you, was that
Design.
a BFA or a
No, I didn't.
BA?
They didn't have that. It's a BA.
Didn't have that. Okay. What did you do after Brooklyn College?
I worked. I got a job as in a recreation center. as an arts and crafts teacher. This was a fascinating time in my life, fellas, because I don't know if you ever heard New York, east side of New York, had Puerto Ricans and mainly Puerto Ricans. And this recreation center was a hangout for gangs. And the woman who ran the recreation center was about this tall, and she carried a big stick. And when the guys came in, she said, "Lay your guns there." Now, the guns that they had were not the kind of guns you see fellas with today. They were called zip guns. So they were made with a big rubber band of some sort, and they could shoot people. But it really was, they were in gangs. They were. There was a Puerto Rican gang, there was a black gang, there was everything. And this woman was just excellent with them. She was excellent because they would come in for the recreation, lay down their weapons and stuff, and then, take part in whatever we had going.
Where was this located?
About 110th Street, East Harlem.
East Harlem.
Mm-hmm. In the school. It was the school. Incidentally, in New York at that time, recreation centers were located in the after school, as considered after school programs. So they were located in the schools, in the gyms, and so forth. And that's where I learned to drink Puerto Rican coffee, which is very creamy, and to speak a little bit of AA stuff, Spanish stuff. It was really quite an experience. From that, how did I get into my other things?
Did you learn Spanish?
Just to kind of we through at each other.
Just to get you through?
Yeah. They weren't always speaking Spanish. But, we could greet each other and that kind of thing. But from there, I don't know, what did I do? I got a job, another kind of job, is that some opportunity always occurred for me. I either met someone, like I was walking down the street in Harlem from my uncle's. My uncle was a dentist. One of my father's brothers became a dentist. And I met this man, and he said, we have a project over in over near Columbia University, and we need such and such. Would you like to apply for the job? So I applied for the job. I don't know, it's been very interesting when I look back and see all the opportunities that opened up for me based on unplanned meetings with other people. And I think that's a very important thing for young people to know, that you can do more in life if you pay attention in a way to the things that open up and you don't think it's an opportunity. If you meet someone who gets interested in you and wants to talk with you, there's an opportunity out of that that comes up for you. You never know. The person could be a reference. I really did. I don't even remember how I met people, but I did. And so I ended up in a project called the Horace Mann Project, and the students from the School of Social Work were directing it one summer, and they said to me, "Why don't you go to the School of Social Work? Why don't you apply?" And I did. I got a scholarship.
At Columbia?
Uh-huh. And I went to the Columbia School of Social Work.
Excellent school.
Yeah. One thing I must say, you have to have some kind of record and like try to keep your grades up if you want to show that you can do something and have some kind of, but they hired me. Now, things are a little different today sometimes because there's so many people competing in different ways, but you still have to look for where the opportunities are. So that's how I got into the School of Social Work. Now, I think I want to make another point about that. In those days, there were a lot of hesitancies about hiring blacks or even admitting them to schools, okay? Even Columbia University probably had a quota, of how many blacks they would admit.
Was this in the 50s you were there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I want to make a point about that. Today, you may not, you have to think about, or somebody has to help you think about, where are the openings? Where are the opportunities? because nobody can help you do that except people who are out there in the world. Your family can't often help you with it. My family wasn't helping me with these opportunities. They didn't know about them. Okay? They did not know about them. They could not have said to me, go over there and apply for this, or go over there and apply for that. It was other people that I met through other people. For instance, the reason I met this man on a street, 7th Avenue, was that I was helping my uncle out in his office, and he sent me out to the store or something. You know, it's like person to person, you kind of make contacts. And he must have said, oh, you're so-and-so's niece or something like that. You do these things. Anyway, I think today I don't know what kids do, but it's very important to know that you get things from keeping your eyes open, trying out things, because I never thought I would. First of all, when I graduated from college, I did not know how to go about getting a job. I did not know how to go about getting a job because I didn't know what I could do. Okay? If you don't know what you can do, you do flounder. And I had thought, well, I'm an art major. I'll get a job in art. But I didn't. But I did get it as an arts and crafts teacher in a recreation center.
So you were open to this.
Yeah.
There was something about the value system that you were raised in that inclined you to pay attention to such opportunities, right?
I guess so.
What do you suppose how would you describe the value system that your family operated under? Your father?
Well, the opportunity, it's kind of like they migrated from an island that had a lot of closed systems, really, because I'll tell you about that later. But it was a closed system for many people. So they came here looking for opportunities, and they already knew you had to work. They knew they had to work. They knew they had to take jobs that came their way. But they say, whatever they did, they were able. I don't know how my father was able to afford buying a house at that point.
That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the values were, I guess they were sort of indirectly communicated. My mother wasn't saying, now you must study or you must do that. You know, she wasn't pointing a finger at us. But they were strict about things. Mm-hmm. You go into school, you go to school. Come home and you do your homework. You know, things like that. There has to be some consistency. You may not like it even. Because like my mother and father were always saying, they made me kind of scared of boys. I wouldn't have anything to do with boys. Because boys are bad. Boys always, they'll get you in trouble. Really? My mother scared the heck out of me about dating boys. Don't bring any babies home for me, she said, And she was, that meant something to me. I didn't want to do that. So it may take, for instance, I think about this because I think kids today don't realize that it doesn't hurt to be the square one. By that I mean, not to go with the crowd all the time. It doesn't hurt you.
Do you think your parents were fair?
Mm-hmm.
They treated you, your two sisters and yourself equally?
No, my sister got the piano lessons.
Your older sister?
Yeah.
She was the favorite?
Yeah, well, for the piano, the music. She got all the music lessons. I was sort of trailing along. Like when we had a professor that came to our house and she was getting the lessons, and he heard me banging on the piano one day. He says, oh, I'll give her some lessons. So I was like, getting it free again, but on the tail end. And so when we moved, I didn't have any more lessons. So,
I see.
But I got these little opportunities. I was in one of their concerts, and I played a little thing called Shooting the Chutes. I'll never forget it. Yeah. But she was getting the real training, and that's all right. I mean, I wasn't necessarily as talented as she was.
Right. Tell us about Columbia. What do you remember about that? Your studies, your professors?
I'll tell you what I remember about it. A couple of things. It won't mean much to them to hear that. The professors were, you would know this, I guess, myself. Columbia was a school that was buying into the Freudian ideas of understanding behavior. So a lot of that was about our orientation to understanding behavior. You know, when you go into a school of social work, some of the courses have to do with learning how to understand people and their behavior. And I had a lot of that kind of orientation. And at that time, Columbia was like a school that had to fight to say, we believe this because the Pennsylvania school believes that. You know, it was really a fight going on. Anyway, that's just a little aside. I went to the school and I said, I want to take casework and group work. Now, casework is where you work one-to-one with people or families. Group work is where you work with a group of people, like in a recreation center or something. Sit down with a group of people. And I always did like group work. So they let me do that. I was one of the first people to take major in both casework and group work. Well, my casework assignment came after I'd been in the group work, completed the group work course, and I was sent to St. Albans Naval Hospital. What I remember about that is I did not know that they didn't want me. This is a naval hospital. They didn't want anyone. Why are you sending someone that's colored to us? We don't want that. But the school wouldn't take me back. The school said, we believe she should be there. And so I ended up having a positive experience, but I didn't know till years later that the supervisor had been told, you know, send her back. We're not taking colored people. So it's kind of interesting. These kind of things here sort of stick with you. You do run into prejudices.
Where was this hospital?
St. Albans Naval Hospital. It was out in Queens.
In Queens. What
It's a
kind
naval
of
hospital.
clients did you have there?
Well, these were servicemen who had been injured.
Were you getting soldiers from Korea still?
I don't know. I don't know where they were from. And don't ask me, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that I had, you know, a limited contact. I mean, a small caseload of some sort. And I once was allowed to observe a doctor taking some fluid out of somebody's back. You know, big deal. And I almost fainted because it was such a...
What was your work there?
As a caseworker.
What did you do? Did you
I
primarily counsel?
I was applying some theory, probably, about helping the family understand the needs of the person who was a patient in the hospital. And I would talk to the patients if they were planning to leave or to be discharged. That's the kind of thing you would do.
How long did you stay there?
That's a semester. I mean, it's actually a year, 2 semesters. That's a placement. It's
That was
not
your
a
field
job.
work.
It's a field work.
And by that time, you had already spent 2 years in classwork?
No, it's simultaneous.
Oh, I see.
You go into the field, say maybe 3 days a week and 2 days in class.
Okay. All together at Columbia, you were there for 2 years?
Yeah.
2 years. Okay.
It's a 2-year.
Came out with a Master's of Social Work.
Right.
Where'd you go from there after you got the degree?
I moved out of New York. I think that's what I did. I went to, I went to Chicago. Did I mention that? I lived in Chicago.
How'd you do
I
that?
left home. I said, I'm going. And I had a friend, one of my classmates was out in Chicago. She was a New Yorker, but she was fulfilling her scholarship requirements for the agency that gave her the fellowship. So I met up with her at the YWCA in Chicago. And and then another girl that had also left Washington, D.C. to do what? Just to get away from her family, I guess. So the 3 of us rented an apartment in Chicago. And in Chicago, I had another very interesting kind of thing. Again, you run into and this is the year, times when people are still, Chicago was divided, okay? The south side of Chicago was all black, The west side of Chicago was Polish and whatnot. And then there was the rest of the people up, you know, in
The Gold Coast.
the Gold Coast. I applied for a job in what was called the back of the yards, a settlement house, okay? They were called settlement houses then. And the man said, oh, you have wonderful credentials, because I'd worked with the Puerto Rican gangs and so forth. But he said, they will kill you over here. I cannot hire you. So when he couldn't hire me, I went back to my little, where else should I apply? Because I want to do group work. And I applied at the Urban League. You know what the Urban League is? Do you know the Urban League?
National Urban League?
Yeah. Okay, the Urban
Tell
League.
us what it is.
It is a black organization that really tries to organize communities so that they get the resources they need and so that they can function in ways that help each other. And that was a very interesting experience because the job, what is he dropping? His tape, oh, his pad, I'm sorry. Okay, it's an interesting experience because the job I had was to go out and organize blocks of people who lived, say, on Princeton Street in New Jersey, in Chicago, and which is what I did. And you know that I understood. Someone told me that organization still exists today.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What
People lived there a long time for it to keep going.
describe the work? What was organizing for you?
Organizing was knocking on doors and telling people that I represent the Urban League and that we would like to bring them together in a meeting to see whether there's some things that they could do together as a block that would advance their needs, whatever they are. And that's what I did. And it was very nice. It was a good experience. Then, but they couldn't pay me. Eventually, they ran out of money. So I had to go look for another job.
How long did you?
So I didn't work too long there.
A year or two?
Not even a year or two. No, it must have been half a year. I have a feeling. Some way the money ran out. And so I applied for the State Department of Mental Health. So that's how I got into mental health work. They hired me because I applied at a mental health clinic.
Illinois.
Illinois State.
How
And it
long-
was located in Chicago. The central office was located in Chicago. And I was there at least 5 or 6 years.
Where's the central office?
Well, the clinic was centralized in Chicago because most of the patients that came out of the mental hospital system then had to report to that clinic
Right.
if they lived in that area.
What part of Chicago was it located in?
I don't remember the street. frankly.
South side, west
No,
side?
no, it was more central, probably west, a little bit west.
West Central. Yeah.
Not all the way over. It was pretty central.
You did that 5 or 6 years? And then what did you do?
I decided to take a job, and you'll laugh because I keep moving around, in Gary, Indiana. And it was a promotion in a way. Gary, Indiana, as a psychiatric consultant. Now, one of the reasons, I'm trying to keep this straight in my mind, but when they hired me for the mental health clinic, they hired me because I had this dual credentials, group work, casework. And so they liked the idea. Oh, I did it again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're getting some. Just 1 second. Go ahead. Your job in Gary.
Gary. Oh, yeah. I was a psychiatric consultant in a mental health clinic again, but I had a bigger title and more money. And I used to take a train to Gary, but I stayed in Chicago.
How far apart are they?
Not far, about 25 miles or so. I don't really know, but the train took me there. It was a cute little train. So I still lived in Chicago.
What kind of a town was Gary?
I don't know. I didn't know. Gary is actually a what? A coal, not coal mining, but
Steel?
yeah, something like that town. And but I had the clients that came to this mental health clinic were children as well as adults, and I worked with children and adults. And I had a very positive experience there, in a way. I enjoyed it. I had a young girl. The boys may be interested in this because, you know, this was a girl that was in a home. She had been removed from her home, and so she wasn't cooperating, something like that. Very quiet. So they said, well, you sit with her and talk with her. She's a teenager, and you can, you know, start talking with her and see if she can open up. Well, I saw her, I bet, for a whole year, and she never spoke to me. But she listened. And I just talked about this and that, and because she improved, she was getting along better in the home, but she didn't talk to me. That was an experience. You can believe it. Because you think, what am I doing? How am I going, you know? But they would bring her every week for her appointment, once a week. And obviously there was some improvement in terms of her communicating with people in the home, etc. But she didn't talk to me. I'd take her outside and we'd sit on a bench and I'd sort of try to imagine some of the things that might be of concern to her and talk about them. So it was and the reason I'm making a point of it is you never know what influence you may have on another if you're willing to be with them. Just to be with them. And they don't do anything to do for you. You know, in other words, she didn't have to, but she was supposed to talk to me. But to me, that was really quite a very valuable experience.
You helped her greatly.
Yeah. And I had another client there who we're not supposed to have contact afterwards, but she would write me because she had so many problems, but she would write me, you know, after I left. But I remember her, Mrs. Gallagher. That was another favorite client. But anyway, from there, I came back to Chicago.
How long did you work in Gary?
2 years.
2 years.
And was hired in a teaching institution called the Illinois State Institute. And it was a training institute in which medical schools had floors. Like Michael Reese had a floor, like the University of Illinois had a floor. All the colleges that train medical personnel had a floor in this psychiatric institute. And that was a fabulous experience because it was a training institute. We were training people to be psychiatrists, social workers. I was a social work supervisor on 2 floors. And, you know, it was a very good experience.
How long did you work there?
I don't remember. I do if I think about it. At least, that was the last job. No, I tell you, yeah. I must have been another 4 or 5 years. Because from there, the guy who was the director recommended me to the University of Michigan.
University of Michigan?
The School of Social Work. And that's where I went from there to teach.
You went to teach there?
I broke the color barrier.
So after this last position at this training institute, you went to Michigan?
Yeah. I moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan.
What year did you move to Ann Arbor?
In the 60s. It was, the revolution was going on.
Yeah. How long were you in Ann Arbor?
6 years.
And what was...
I think it was 6 years. I left in 71, so I must have gone in 65.
Wow. That was quite a turbulent time
Yes,
there.
It was.
Tell us about that. What was Michigan like?
Terrific. Well, what can I say? I want to say this about it. I have to just, from my perspective, being on a faculty was a kind of a, you know, a scary experience because everybody is very, very academic, if you will. But it was at a time when they were deciding whether they would admit, quote unquote, disadvantaged. Okay, the disadvantaged. Everybody know what the disadvantaged are? He does. Do you? You know what the disadvantage, what? You do. Tell me.
It's like when somebody, like another person, try to take more control of another person.
I'm sorry.
It's like, for instance, like when, you say disadvantage.
Yes.
That's like when another person is trying to, like, take over a person, like, can't help itself or something like that.
That's the disadvantaged person. Who's the disadvantaged person? The one trying to help or the one who's been needs to be taken over?
The one that's being taken advantage of.
Oh, advantage of. Mm-hmm.
Some people cut it off and say advantage.
Say what?
Some people cut the word down instead of saying disadvantage.
Yeah, they say advantage. You know any disadvantaged people?
People with certain type of disabilities.
She said, do you know?
Yeah, he said, well, I mean, you may know, but someone with a disability, right? Okay. Well, the reason I'm making you think about that is because one of the most disturbing things that happened to me there was the faculty would not listen to me when I said, you don't label people to let them in. But they voted to let black kids into Michigan because they were disadvantaged. Now, all black kids are not disadvantaged, if you want to call them disadvantaged, but are already labeled before you get there. And it was a thing that really, I'm sure it was part of what triggered the revolt that occurred there at Michigan. The law school students, there were quite a few law school students and other students too, they were all black, organized and took over the administration building. Shut everybody out to make demands for certain things. At that time, they were demanding, I think, both special housing for themselves as well as a student place for black students, kind of thing.
Were these folks connected to the Panthers?
No,
Were they connected to SNCC?
no, they were disorganized.
Just Michigan law students?
Yeah, to make a demand that they felt they weren't being treated the same as white students.
I guess I'm wondering, was there a larger aspect of the national movement for civil rights that they were connected with? Or is this just really something that...
No, they were part of it. They meant to be part of it, but they didn't label themselves anything but students. They didn't have a name. They wanted to have a black student union, though. In other words, they wanted to get special recognition from the school and the advantages of having, say, a space that they could meet in if they wanted to, and maybe better housing. That was part of the civil rights push, the whole civil rights push in the 60s, to get civil rights for everybody. But, and that's what happened. There were more and more black students being admitted, but they were still, seen as disadvantaged. Anyway,
Was this part of the affirmative action push?
probably.
I'm trying to wonder where the legislation was. Civil Rights Act of 1962, that was very significant in pushing for, of course, in public education, of course, Brown versus Board of Education all
it was
throughout
all
the
way
50s
back,
was being worked out. By the time you get into the 60s, the new civil rights legislation that there was one that came through the Kennedy administration, right?
Yeah.
And then another in 65 came with the Voting Rights Act in 1965. There was another Civil Rights Act in 65, 66 under the Johnson administration.
Well, let me put it this way. This was the time when black was beautiful, okay? I want to say that very strongly to you because you will not remember this, but I remember it. Suddenly, I wore my hair natural, okay? No more pressing. And everybody was saying, can I touch it? And that kind of stuff. Because we were going to say, we're black and proud. And so my hair was natural at that period. And it didn't work that way for a long time. So there was a movement, and I don't want to tie it in with legislation right now. I just want to tie it in with the concept that black is beautiful, and black, the word black can be decathected. Now, what I mean by that is that I don't know how you feel, but I remember somebody called me black, it hurt. Okay? Sometimes parents will call you black. It might hurt you the same, but if a white person calls you black, it's like, you know, like calling you nigger. So black was a word that could hurt, even if it was just a color, okay? And so I, for one, was extremely glad to get that word decathected, which means it did not bother me to be called black.
And this is the Black Power movement.
Yes.
That was the main goal of the Black
That's
Power
right.
movement.
So, okay. So it was, there were many threads moving there. Actually, for me to be hired there meant that the school was trying to take an affirmative action stance, open the doors, that kind of thing. So that was an extremely valuable period of time.
Were there any African American professors at Michigan who helped the students to organize? Were there any notable?
There might have been. There was a guy
folks?
named Couch. Was it Couch?
Oh, Couch, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I think Couch was.
I know him.
Yeah, I think you heard of him. He might have been one of-
Historian, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. I can't think of any other name. That probably was the main name. It might have been a. I really, you know, can't really pinpoint, but I'm sure there was somebody
Mhm.
that was. But these were smart kids. They could organize, and they got the whole thing. It was really tremendous.
Michigan is one of the top universities in the country. Was it always that prestigious then
Yeah.
as well, in the 60s?
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, if you had a doctorate, you didn't flaunt it. Everybody was called Mr. or Mrs. You didn't flaunt your doctorate. That's very cute. It was assumed you had it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
In 1971, then you left Michigan.
Yeah.
And where did you go?
I came here.
To Washington. Where?
I got married and came here. I wasn't married up to that point.
You married in Michigan?
Yeah.
I see. At the university? Somebody you met there?
No, I married somebody I knew from Chicago.
Okay. Somebody you dated a long time?
Yep.
Okay. And finally, after dragging your feet, you tied the knot.
Yeah. After he dragged
Jumped the broom.
After he dragged his feet. Anyway, yeah, we jumped the broom in Ann Arbor. We had a beautiful wedding in Ann Arbor. I had our own house. I had my own house. I had the reception in my yard.
In Ann Arbor. Yeah. Where did you get married?
In church.
In Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you still Reformed?
For what?
You mentioned that you had been involved with the Reformed Church?
Oh, no. By then, the Reformed Church was as a kid. I'd been through the Methodist Church, through quite a few other churches by then. But that was an Episcopalian church. That's why my parents were Episcopalians.
Right, Anglican. And you've been a member of an Anglican church ever since?
No,
Episcopalian.
no,
Okay. But you are now?
no,
Oh,
no.
I thought you were a member of
I'm a
St.
member of the-
Augustine.
No.
I thought you were a member of St. Augustine.
No. I'm a member of a church. My husband's parents has a history of being pastors in, et cetera, and that was Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church
Okay, Metropolitan. Okay. Where is that located?
on M Street between 15th and 16th.
Okay. How long have you been a member there?
Since I married him, practically.
71. Okay. And why did you come to Washington? Was it his work or?
He was here already.
He was here.
Yeah, he was here.
What was his career?
Oh boy, you gonna use all this information? No.
I mean, we're just trying to get a sense of your chronology.
He was a lawyer, and he was, but he was also working for the National Booker T. Washington's organization, National Business League, the Negro National Business League. he got to work with them, and that was his love of his life. And he gave his all to the National Negro Business League.
It's an interesting organization. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's an organization that whose mission was to organize black businessmen to advance their issues as black businessmen. And it was founded way back in the beginning of the 20th century.
By Booker T.
1903
Washington.
By Booker T. Washington.
Right.
And it had kind of petered down a bit. And then a guy here in Washington named Berkeley Beryl started it up again. No, it started up again when the Minority Business Administration was formed in the government, because then they were able to get grants to help do the work of that thing. Because most times black businessmen did not, have the kind of funds that would help them keep some organizations going. So they had some help with grants and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still well known. I mean, and by well known, it depends on the person you're talking to.
Right.
But anyway.
So that was his work. And then what did you do when you came here?
I worked with Howard University for a while in the medical school. I worked on my doctorate at Catholic University.
At what university?
Catholic.
Catholic University.
And and then I decided I would teach. My last teaching job was at the University of the District of Columbia.
And what year?
Social welfare.
Social welfare. What years?
Department of Social Work.
Mm-hmm.
1980.
1980. Where did you live when you came to Washington?
Down here.
Here, Southwest.
Tiber Island.
Tiber Island.
My husband had an apartment there. And
1971.
Yeah.
What was it like then?
It was nice, like it is now. It's still nice. Characterizing it was a rental property at that time. And then it turned into a cooperative because the people decided, well, we ought to, buy this property. I've forgotten why. But anyway, so I was a part of that, changing it into a cooperative. So we bought an apartment, we bought the house rather, as a result of that. That brought us together. I mean, that brought people together more. People in apartments can go about their business. And I was thinking as I came here that many people came to Washington and worked in the government during that period. And so there were a lot of government people there, I would say, who moved on. It was kind of,
Right.
turnover was great.
By 1971, the mall had been finished?
I guess so. I'm not sure. They did. I don't think it was finished because suddenly it opened up with stores and escalators. So they had worked on something about it. They did something different.
That all happened after you
Yeah.
arrived.
Yeah.
Was the grocery store where it is now, the Safeway?
Back a little further. Yeah, it was there. Safeway was there. The drugstore was there, I think.
There was a bowling alley and a
There was
movie
a bowling
theater.
alley, yeah, what movie? Oh yeah, there was a movie theater. And there were restaurants to eat in. There was an Italian restaurant underground. There was a restaurant with southern cooking and stuff facing this way, yeah, right over here on this side of the building. And they tried to actually have stores that were to bring people out to shop, but they never got an anchor store. And so after a while that faded. See those escalators in the hall? They went up to a level that they had stores up there. Shoe store, things like that. You can't ask me because I can't quite remember. I remember the nicest clothing store they had there, but that's the most.
So it was like a normal suburban shopping mall,
Yeah, smaller though.
small.
Smaller.
And
Always small.
the people who were moving in, like in Tiber Island and Harbor Square and all the other places, do you think that they patronize the mall adequately?
No, because there weren't enough people to patronize.
It's just a matter of there weren't enough people.
Yeah, yeah,
But the people who
here
were
would
here
go.
did
Sure.
shop there.
yeah,
But it wasn't quite enough.
yeah.